Hi, this is Stephanie Stock with Ohio Advocates for Medical Freedom. We are so excited today because we have Tom Renz with us. He is an Ohio-based attorney that is leading the legal team who represents Ohio Stands Up. Many of you have already been donating to Ohio Stands Up. It is a group of a dozen Ohioans who have assembled with a common goal of reversing the governor's and health directors' overreaching coronavirus orders. On Monday, they brought the federal lawsuit challenging Governor DeWine. They brought it on Monday, and it's been all over the internet, all over Facebook. Everyone's really excited to hear more about this case. One of the silver linings, I think, in all of this that's been going on is that this major overreach by government has caused many different groups to come together. I know OAMF has been networking with a lot of new liberty groups. We're working to get things done, coming together to get voices heard. I was thrilled that 2 of our board members have been working with you guys. So we've been able to coordinate efforts because we've been getting tons of messages from parents, employees, and a lot of discrimination. So Tom, we'll get into this and start asking some questions. Again, thank you for taking time. I know you're slammed right now.
I'm honored to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Could you explain a little bit to our viewers what drew you to this case in the first place?
I started following the coronavirus stuff back in January, and I'm a nerdy guy. So I started digging into this and looking at the numbers and looking at things, and I'm seeing, the case fatality rates and the reproduction rates and all these things that they're talking about, all these statistics that no one really understands. And I'm looking at them, and even in the worst case scenarios, even in the Italys and in the Chinas, it was never something that we would normally react this way to, right? So I'm seeing China locked down entirely. And I'm seeing these other places locked down entirely. And then I see it come to the United States, and I see, the reaction that I'm seeing when this first started. And, the thing about it is the worst case fatality rate that I've heard on this was from Italy when they were talking about 11%. Now that's been revised way down since then. They found out that there were all sorts of mistakes. But the thing is the original SARS had over a 9% case fatality rate. MERS has over 30% case fatality rate. Both have just as high reproduction rates or fairly close. And we didn't see, global shutdowns, global lockdowns, anything like that. So I said, what's going on here? And, I'm a freedom guy. You live your life, I'll live mine. Okay. So, they're telling me that I got to live my life differently because someone might catch this disease. Well, if it's got a 30% case fatality rate, maybe, but not when you're looking at something like this. So it smells fishy to me. So fast forward, I had a client come to me, and it was during the lockdown, and she was immediately post-op stage 4 cancer. She couldn't go to her doctor because her doctor was out of state. Now, for anybody that knows anything about post-op cancer, stage 4, you don't wait. Timing's critical, So we called and we tried to get exemptions from the governor, and we tried to do all sorts of things to get her to her doctor. You shouldn't have to hire a lawyer to go to your doctor. It's unheard of. But, we tried to get all this. Governor didn't care. The state reps that we talked to, they made some calls, but then they didn't want to really put their neck out politically for it. And, it was a nightmare. So we eventually got her there. But what I found is, you can't tell me that you're all about saving lives and then, not be willing to save a life. I mean, it wouldn't have taken anything for an exemption in that case. It's not like he cared about the law, or he wouldn't have locked down the entire state. So what's throwing out the law for one more person if it's going to save a life? He didn't care. I still don't know whether he doesn't care or he's just misguided, but in any event, none of this has been legal or constitutional, and our freedoms are at stake. We have to stop this. So it's kind of where it came from, and it's evolved from there. And I was really lucky to run into the plaintiffs we got. They're amazing. These people are, for anybody that doesn't know, a high-profile case like this is a tough thing to be a part of. My plaintiffs are some of the strongest, most patriotic people I've ever seen. To put yourself out there, to risk the hate mail, to risk all the things that go with this, these people are heroes, and I'm just honored to work with them. So that's how I got here.
Yeah, you made a good point. I think we're at a place now where the government basically decides who lives and dies under the guise of public health to save lives. There's no logic to any of this. No
No.
logic. It's shocking to see how many people are just lock in step with this and accepting it. So I pray that this lawsuit will open even more eyes for those. And again, those that want to mask, those that want to socially distance, those that want to take over and above with their businesses, that they should be able to do that. And they should, but this should not be under force of the governor. This should not be under threat. Some people are still closed simply because they're scared of what the governor might do, even though they're completely against it. And that's not America. That is not America.
That's a great point.
Yeah, and like you said, you're getting hate mail, so maybe you could go into a little bit what benefits come from a federal lawsuit as opposed to a local lawsuit, and who might be against that, other than the governor, obviously.
Right. Well, so one of the things that's really important here to understand, and this is something that a lot of people don't get. So everything's politicized right now, right? So everything's right or left. So right now, the people on the right are mad because their rights have been stomped. People on the left seem to be more tolerant of it. But I'm going to give you a great example here. One of the questions that we bring up in the case is the unequal application of law. That's an equal protection issue, right? And it's an interesting question because one of the things that we've done is we've allowed a lot of protests to happen. Now, I'm 100% in favor of allowing protests. We should never, ever stop those. That is freedom of assembly, free speech, free this, free that. We have to allow that. But at the same time, we were told that you can't congregate in mass at church. Mm-hmm. Now, that doesn't really sit well with me, because why would you allow one type of freedom of assembly but not another? That doesn't make any sense. And that is the answer to your question. Ultimately, what's happened is the states have violated our federal constitutional rights. And that's just not acceptable. These are rights that the courts have determined to be under strict scrutiny. And what that means is that you can't take those rights away unless you got a very, very good reason. And you'd better be able to prove it. And you'd better be able to prove that you didn't do any more than you had to accomplish that goal. So they haven't proven that. They haven't even shown that. And the more the numbers are coming out, and the more we're finding, and the more we've shown in our case that the 180,000 deaths is patently false. I mean, that's just not true. We've had 180,000 people that have died possibly with COVID. I would argue that that's not true either. But in no way, shape, or form have 180,000 people died from COVID. It's not even close to that. According to my experts and the people who have ran the math, and these are people far smarter than I'll ever be, realistically, the number could be closer to 40,000, maybe. If we use the CDC's number, that translates to 10,000. It's probably more than that. There were probably a number of instances where people did die. They had other comorbidities, but the COVID did actually get to them. But, ultimately, for a number that small, it just doesn't pass the smell test. You can't pull away people's fundamental constitutional rights for something like that. And if we're going to allow it, then the thing that's going to happen is we're going to have a precedent. And in the future, maybe it will be the other way around. Maybe that we get another governor who in the future really doesn't, I think of this, I pull it back to the civil rights era, back to the 60s, right? So if we think about back in the 60s, there were governors out there that just absolutely could not stand the idea of civil rights. That's abhorrent. That's sick. Why would you be against that? But these governors, if they would have thought for a second that they could have declared a public health emergency and used that to allow for discrimination, don't tell me they wouldn't have.
Well, they totally would.
Right. And where would we have been now? So this should not be a right or left issue. This should be an American issue. This is about freedom. And if we allow this precedent to stand, it's not just the right that's in trouble, it's the entire country. Because this precedent affects every right and every freedom. And it's a terrifying thing. So we had to hit this in federal court, because without federal precedent, state precedent's a little easier to overturn, and the federal Constitution is really what bars this. So we felt that was the strongest approach.
Well, I'm very excited about that. What we're seeing right now, to me, I mean, looks like a Marxist takeover. I mean, that's really what that looks like, how it's developing. I mean, because like you said, why would you limit church? But there's full on rioting. I mean, there's people actually in harm's way, not even peaceful protests. So for the governor to ask the cops to stand down in situations where people are at actual risk and property as an actual risk, and I can't sing in church, we've got a serious problem, and I'm praying this lawsuit will address that. So question number 3, if you win this suit, how is this going to give hope to all of these people who have been messaging us about the mask discrimination, people getting fired at work, even having a medical exemption on hand, being fired? Some are getting marched into meetings. They have to prove their health condition, and then some board decides if it's legitimate. I mean, this is just crazy. Will this lawsuit give them immediate hope if you guys win?
Thank you so much for asking that, and I'm going to tell you why. My phone is ringing off the hook, and it really, just as a human being, I know I'm a lawyer, so I might be part monster, but as a human being, it breaks my heart, because I'm hearing story after story, and these people are begging with me to take their cases, because no one will take them. And unfortunately, I have 24 hours in a day and 2 hands, and there aren't many lawyers taking these cases. And I really sincerely hope that some others get on this, because there's so many clear violations of the American with Disabilities Act going on and things like that. The discrimination is horrendous. I had a lady called me. She was the victim of just some absolutely horrendous abuse. And because of that, she had PTSD, and she would die before she wore a mask. It's just that simple. And she's been discriminated against even by her doctor. I couldn't take the case because I just don't have the time. But this is horrible. What kind of a monstrous world are we living in when that sort of thing is happening over something that really is not substantially worse than the seasonal influenza? I mean, there are certain at-risk categories. If you're 85 years old, yeah, it might be. But if you're 85 years old, a lot of things are a risk. And, that's just the way it is. Here's the thing. I want to help all of these people, and I wish I could take every one of these cases from the bottom of my heart. And I will help if any other attorneys want to take these cases and need anything that I can provide for them. They're welcome to get a hold of me. I'm happy to help in any way that I can. But the biggest thing that I can do to help these people is what I'm doing. You got to understand that if we are able to win this case, in any way, whether we'll start out with a preliminary injunction request. They're harder to get than to actually win the case. You can lose a preliminary injunction request and still win a case, but we're going to start out there. If we get that, or if we win the case, or even just as the case is going on, one of the things that's really important is we're bringing out true facts. And one of the things I'm very excited about is when you do a lawsuit, you get something called discovery. Discovery is once the suit starts, the state can't deny our FOIA requests. They can't deny our request for information. Now, I don't know if your viewers will know this, but we've even had state reps from our Ohio House of Representatives that have asked for information about this from the governor and from the Department of Health, and they're just ignored. They're blown off. So apparently our Department of Health and governor feel as though they're a king that's not accountable to the legislative part of our government, but that's okay. We're going to deal with that in court. We want the data. And please don't lie to me and tell me that you don't have the staff to get it. If you have models that you're working off of, which you must, because you're telling us that the science is telling you what you have to do, and you're working with these doctors and these very smart people to make these decisions. They're informed decisions based on a very rational decision-making process. Okay, well, that means that you have these models. If you have the model, all you have to do is email it to me. I've got the experts, they'll evaluate it, and I tell you what, I will give my word. If my experts evaluate the models that the state's using, and that those models justify these actions, I will advise my clients tomorrow to drop this suit. I will say that we're saving lives and we need to do this. But that's not going to happen. They're not going to share those models. They're not going to share the death certificates. They're not going to do it till I get to discovery. And the reason they're not going to do it is because they know it's garbage. They know it's just absolute trash. And, you know, we just can't allow this to stand. So we're going to help people in this case in a lot of ways. Once we get to discovery, as real data gets out and as real information gets out, hopefully we'll be able to alleviate some of the fear that so many people feel. There's a lot of people, and there are very, very smart people who've been misled on this, including, I actually cite in my complaint the Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court. He cited that there were 100,000 deaths from coronavirus as of May 30th. He was misled on that. That wasn't true. There were 100,000 deaths with coronavirus, maybe, but not from coronavirus. And that is a huge distinction. But this is what they've done. They've talked out of both sides of their mouths, and they've really misled people. And it's absolutely horrendous the way that they've approached this. And I say that with all due respect, because I'm very much the type of person who has a lot of respect for the courts. I can't imagine what kind of a person would go into court and allow a case to move forward that would mislead people all the way up to the Supreme Court of the United States. That to me is just absolutely mind-blowing. And, you know, so we're going to help people by getting real data out there, real information out there. We're going to help them by, God willing, winning this case. And as that happens, hopefully some of this will start to subside some.
Yeah, I think people are really, you're right about being misled. And people always question, they think everyone, you know, everyone in government is bad and And I'm like, no, many people are misled. Some are literally, I mean, we have a lot of good representatives. We have some good senators. They are paralyzed right now. Yep. I mean, we just had the Democrats, they were trying to add an amendment to repeal a different bill that's really controversial right now, HB 6. You probably heard about to repeal that bill and tack it on to every single bill that the House wanted to bring to a vote. I mean, we've got all kinds of, aside from the governor, we've got all kinds of shenanigans going on right now. And our legislature, we've got HB 1 sitting in conference committee. We've got SB 1, we've got SB 311. Everything's sitting because the governor doesn't allow anything to move. Even when 55 went forward, vetoed. I mean, this is what we've been dealing with. It's going to take a lawsuit. People keep messaging. I keep saying, look, I don't know. Maybe you just needed to get discriminated against and go to court. We've got to get, and when they have discovery, now it does become public record. Like you're talking about, all of this evidence that gets introduced, everyone can see it. There will be zero reason for any ignorance to continue. People will have the information, and then they should be, and hopefully more people will stand up and say, wow, I got bamboozled. I've got to do something. And then when we have those kind of numbers, I think we're going to start seeing change a lot more quickly.
I agree with you. And I sincerely hope that as these numbers come out, I ask, you know, I know there are a lot of people probably in this audience who are very well educated on this issue and are just beating their heads against the wall saying, how can you people not see this? And it's very frustrating, but I will also remind you, so I myself have spent thousands of hours on this, literally, more hours than I can count, but definitely in the thousands. And when these numbers come out, I would say that what we really have to do is we have to start coming together as people, and we have to start sharing with people who are scared the truth, and let them come to that realization. We don't need to tell people, oh, you're stupid, you were fooled. No. What we need to do is we need to say, look what happened. And you know what? You're in good company because a lot of other people got fooled too. And I will tell you, to that extent, I really hope that our listeners, the people watching this, if you've got some time and you really, or insomnia, and you want to cure it, run a Google search. You search for Google Scholar and then search. And run that search on public health and motivational theory and fear. And what you'll find is that since the 60s, it's been the use of fear to motivate the populace has been a regular fixture in public health. And if you follow through with the recommendations based on these studies, and these are documented. We have some of this stuff in our case, and we've got a whole bunch more of it coming. They followed that playbook. And, fear comes from always showing the glass as half empty rather than half full. We show the one kid who died, and we don't mention that that kid had 14 comorbidities and, it was a terribly tragic case anyways. We don't show that that's the only kid that died in the state. In fact, if it's Ohio, they can't even show the one, because last I knew, we haven't had a single child under 19 die. But we still mask our children in school and, limit what they can do. Yeah, the thing is we've got to get the information out to people and start undoing the damage that's been done. And to do that, we have to come together. And I sincerely hope that this does become something where people can come together. We should be addressing this as a nation. We should be asking ourselves, how did we ever let ourselves get to this point? This is America. What's happened here? And I hope that as this information comes out, that people will work to do that. I will also say, though, that until we start seeing some changes, you need to be calling your legislature every day, sending them letters. You need to be working very hard. And even now, be friendly about it, but educate people. Get the information out there. The information's out there. We've made public a ton of information. You put together our information, good luck debunking that. Yeah, I've heard someone tell me that I'm lying. Someone told me the other day, and as an educated guy in the media, told me that I was lying when I said that the CDC's numbers were false. I said, no, I'm not. He said, no, it's been debunked, because he read some newspaper article that said it was debunked. I said, well, how about I'll one-up your newspaper article and I'll send you the links to the CDC, and you can read what the CDC says. How about I send you a quote from the Director of Public Health for the state of Illinois? And if that doesn't work, how about I send you a quote from Dr. Burks? The CDC's numbers are misleading. They were intentionally misleading, and they were intended to be misleading so that they could scare people. So there haven't been 180-some thousand deaths from COVID. There may have been 180,000 deaths with COVID, but not from. And there's such a dramatic difference. That's why we keep, people have asked me, well, did you hear about that guy who got hit by the bus and they said it was a COVID death? Well, sometimes I have, sometimes I haven't. And I've heard some really egregious cases like that. But here's the thing. Under the CDC's orders, that's not illegal. That's what they've asked us to do. Now, different states have different rules on it. I'll grant you that. But, if you look at the 40-some hundred deaths that they're alleged in Ohio, I have, and I can't use them as evidence yet because I got them through a back channel, but I had someone give me some death certificates. They're copies, so I can't use them. They're not evidence. But pretty much all of the death certificates that I've reviewed that were a COVID death were people 75 plus years old, most of them, a lot of them 85, 90 years old, in a nursing home with multiple comorbidities, yes, congestive heart failure for years, advanced dementia, things like that. These are people who passed naturally, but because they met some random clinical criteria, they were listed as COVID deaths, and it's nonsense. This has never been justified. The medical professionals who have pushed this, those people, they should be just absolutely ashamed of themselves. It's unbelievable. They knew better. They knew better for a long time. I mean, I understand, some of this caution stuff, but really, where's the ethics?
With the CDC, this is absolutely a word game, and fear sells, period.
Yeah.
Fear sells. And for the medical professionals that you're talking about, there are some people that need to go. They should not be in this profession. And I think we're seeing more and more how much financial incentive there is for the state of Ohio, this pandemic, to just keep between testing, between Wexner's vaccine trial, between AstraZeneca. I mean, all here in Ohio. Isn't that convenient? And so you have to wonder, are they trying to put us in the long haul, not only for the election? I mean, we're a swing state. Let's look at that too. But I mean, there's just so much there. People have got to be questioning at least some of this. even those that have been kind of buying into it. And I agree with you. The more we show them the facts. I mean, you have to be kind, because attacking people isn't going to be helpful. I mean, in the medical freedom movement, we already know what it's like. For years, we've been dealing with being called baby killers and this and that because our child has a vaccine exemption because maybe a sibling was harmed. I mean, we get it. We've had threats. We've had all that. We get it. And we've had parents that have come to us later and said, wow, I used to trash you guys on Facebook. And then, you know, the other day my son had a really bad reaction and injury. What can I do? Can you help me? And we say, absolutely, here's what you can do. And that is until you know something, you know, you don't know it till you know it. And then once, you know, you just have to get people to that point and then be helpful with them. So yeah, I agree. Let's get out the message and let's do it in a kind way, lead them in a kind way. I know you supposedly have a great lineup of expert witnesses. I'm just wondering, can you give us any kind of a tease as to what types of facts they might be bringing to the case that would help dismantle these orders? Are you allowed to tell us anything?
Sure. Well, I mean, a lot of it I don't even have to tease. I mean, we've made a bunch of it public.
Oh, okay.
You know, and that stuff, we had Dr. Peter Bregan as a Harvard-trained psychiatrist, and he's a very interesting character. I'm not sure who I'm allowed to talk about right now because I haven't got permission from all of them, but I know that Dr. Bregan is given me permission to use his name. The neat thing about Peter is that Peter is 83 years old. And I find that to be interesting because if Peter happened to get sick and was in a nursing home, the state of Ohio, he doesn't live in Ohio, but if he had, in the state of Ohio, apparently an 83-year-old would not be capable of determining for themselves whether they want to take the risk of seeing their family. If you go to a nursing home, you're in jail. My brother goes to visit. My mother's in a nursing home right now because she's recovering from a stroke. And my brother calls it the petting zoo because you're able to go outside and look in the window and wave, much like an animal in a cage, but you actually can't interact with them. It's the most disgusting thing I've ever seen. You know, we discriminate against our seniors so badly. These are people who have given their lives to being productive citizens in our country. And, you know, they get 70, 80 years old, and the governor is going to determine whether it's okay for them to see their grandchildren, whether it's okay to see their children, because we've got these rules for these nursing homes that are just egregious. You know, I don't understand that. So I do appreciate that I've got someone who's 83 years old that's really, he wrote a beautiful treatise on this. I don't know how else I'd describe it, but that's helping us in this case. And, you know, like I said, if he were in Ohio and he happened to get sick, well, he wouldn't be capable of making a decision for himself as to whether he wanted to see his family. But thankfully, he is at least competent enough to write a brilliant treatise that absolutely is devastating to Ohio's case, in my opinion. We have some just incredible people involved in this case. I'm just honored to work with them. These are people who are just at the top of their fields. And, you know, I've got more calling. I just had a call yesterday from a very highly placed doctor who's been a part of different very well-known associations, things like that. Brilliant guy, wants to help just because he knows it's garbage. It is, and there's no other way to say it. So, you know, I think we've got some neat things up our sleeves. I think we've got some very great evidence coming up. I think that this will be a very strong case, and I'm very eager to see where it goes. I mean, this is a tough case for the district courts or for any courts because there's a lot of science and a lot of facts and so on and so forth. But under the Constitution, the Supreme Court ruled a long time ago that we have the right to challenge an emergency declaration. And this came from, it's the only case that is even really sort of on point in terms of precedent for our case. A lot of this is case of first impression. But that case came out of the Great Depression. There was an emergency declared. And along with stating the fact that during an emergency, constitutional rights aren't supposed to change, I want to remind the state of Ohio that. But they also said that we do have the right to challenge an emergency at any time. So that is what we're doing. And certainly it is something that we have the right to do under Supreme Court of the United States. I do want to, before we're done, remind me to tell you about the curve.
Well, you can tell me right now because that was my last question.
Great, great. I love the curve, okay? So if you all remember, we started this whole thing because of this terrible curve, and our healthcare system was going to be overrun with sick and dying from COVID-19, and it was going to shut down the healthcare system. And if we didn't declare an emergency, we'd have people dying in the streets. Well, you know, if that were true, I would think that would be cause for an emergency. But I would still say that even in that case, that means that we should be expanding capacity to deal with this crisis rather than, you know, just taking away everybody's fundamental rights, because that's the constitutional thing to do. I know that's silly, but it is the constitutional thing to do. So we actually did a little bit of both. And if you all remember, maybe you didn't even know, but the governor we had a bunch of temporary facilities to deal with all these sick and dying people that were going to overrun our healthcare system. I think the IX Center in Cleveland was turned into a temporary facility. There are a bunch of places around the country. Here's the thing though. They tore them all down. They tore them down.
There is no.
Yeah. Yeah, they tore them down. If that's the basis for the emergency, why in God's name is it still here? Because it must not be too bad. I mean, we tore them down, so clearly we aren't going to need them. I mean, you know, so are we lying or are we just completely incompetent? Because, I mean, if it's still that bad of an emergency and you tore them down, then you really are a very, very poor governor. Yeah, that's just a bad decision. But if we still, you know, if we don't need them anymore, if that was a good decision, why in God's name are we still under an emergency declaration? So, you know, I'm waiting to see the answer to that question. I don't know what it is, but I would love to hear what it is. So we look forward to asking that question.
Yes, and I think one thing that's definitely come out of all of this, people are going to now look at the budget bill for emergency power orders.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think we've all been very displaced from politics, I think, and really looking at what comes at us and through what portals. And so I think Americans that weren't paying attention, they are paying attention now. So
well, I agree with you. I think that one of the problems is that politics have become so divisive that you have to just walk away from the news now and then, or you lose your mind. It doesn't matter which side you're on, you're just losing your mind on it. And so, you know, people they got disengaged, and this is what happened. So now we have to get re-engaged because we need to fix this really quickly.
Yeah, Tom, I totally agree. We definitely need to re-engage. To anyone who would like to contribute to Ohio Stands Up lawsuit, please, you can check our link. We'll have it up available on here for you to donate. If you would like to donate to help OAMF and the work that we're doing, you can again donate through Facebook, or you can go to ohioamf.org. We definitely plan on keeping everybody posted as to how this suit progresses. And Tom, thank you for your heart for this. Thank you for your efforts on this and for your time. We appreciate you being with us today and giving us information. It's so important to get this out to the people. So thank you so much for that.
Well, I'm so grateful. And let me tell you something. I don't care about movie stars. I don't care about famous athletes. You know, they're all just people. What I care about and what impresses me is the people who stand for things and people who are willing to put themselves out there and to fight for things. I'm honored to work with my plaintiffs. I'm honored to work with people like you. I'm honored to work with all of these people who are supporting us and who are out there fighting for this. And I encourage you to do that. Be civil, be kind, understand that people are scared, but you've got to help us fight for this. We need as many people as possible on this because we're going to fight in court, but we need you to fight in the court of public opinion as well. That's a critical fight. And so I encourage everyone, get involved, get others involved, educate people, reach out, do what you can do.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.